politique, la crise politique au Brésil. Donc sans doute, vous en avez vu dans la presse, autour de la personne de la présidente, Dilma, etc., etc. Donc les camarades vont parler en anglais avec la traduction de Michael. Encore un merci, parce qu'on lui a demandé juste au moment qu'il est arrivé ce soir. Et il a accepté de faire. Mais c'est très bien pour nous, parce que comme il connaît très bien la situation, c'est toujours plus facile pour une traduction. Donc, les camarades, en tout cas, je vais présenter les deux qui vont parler. Donc, Rebecca, qui est de la direction de Insurgia, qui va commencer, et donc en bleu, et éventuellement sera complété par Daniel. Donc, en fait, les camarades viennent tous de la ville de Curitiba, qui est au sud du Brésil, mais trois entre eux, dont Rebecca et Daniel, sont actuellement à Rio. Si j'ai tout bien saisi de ce qu'on m'a expliqué. Donc, Rebecca, you can start.
All right, so good evening.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. We started putting up some points to talk about the political situation today in Brazil. I don't know if you want me to just speak a little and then stop.
One phrase.
Okay. And so we're here on vacation actually. So we're traveling around Europe just for vacations. And we stopped here and we're very happy to be here today to talk to you, bring some contributions on international thinking about the struggles. We think it's very important.
Donc nous sommes en fait en Europe en voyage, vacances, et nous sommes heureux d'être ici avec vous pour pouvoir vous parler un peu de la situation politique au Brésil.
We're all militants of Insurgia and PSOL, because Insurgia is a tendency inside PSOL, which is a section of the Fourth International in Brazil. And talking about the political crisis is not something very easy to be done, because the political crisis in Brazil right now, it's not very definite, it's very dynamic. And every day, ever since we've been traveling, there's every day something new that comes out and changes the scenario a little bit. So it is something that, although I will try my best to bring some information, we do not have all the answers on how this is going to evolve. And PSOL, also because it's not so big, but we do not have like a political way completely strategically designed, I don't know how to say it, but put for this moment.
Alors, donc nous sommes des militants tous de Insurgia, qui est un courant dans le PSOL, section brésilienne de la 4e internationale. Et bon, c'est un peu difficile de parler de la crise politique au Brésil parce que la situation change tout le temps. Pendant le temps qu'on était en voyage, ça a déjà changé plusieurs fois. Et puis, bon, il faut dire que le PSOL, c'est un petit parti qui n'a pas non plus une vision d'ensemble, toujours une stratégie, etc.
Well, what we can start is like putting a few facts that are going on now. So we can talk today in Brazil about an institutional crisis. And I think what some of the facts that point to that, the fact, for example, that we're going through the biggest corruption scandal that has ever been in Brazil. There is currently a process of impeachment running against the president of the Republic, against Dilma. We have the head of the parliament involved in the corruption scandal. And so these all brings a lot of instability to the scenario.
Donc, quelques faits, bon, peut-être connus. Il y a une vraie crise institutionnelle au Brésil, qui est en rapport, entre autres, avec le plus grand scandale de corruption de l'histoire du Brésil. Et vous savez qu'il y a un processus d'impeachment en cours contre la présidente Dilma. Et il y a aussi le fait que le président du Parlement, Cunha, est lui aussi accusé d'avoir participé à la corruption.
With that, there are like two big narratives that have been constructed trying to explain what is happening. I think that one is really big on the media, which is trying to explain all the problems that Brazil is going through right now on only corruption, and trying to isolate this factor and put like this is like more the right wing saying that corruption is a problem with PT, and then the government is completely wrong, and it's being criticized on a right wing sort of way and a moral kind of critics that's been done. So this is one narrative. The second one would be one that is being done by the government, which is to try to say, oh, this is the right wing trying to overthrow the government, so everybody who is a left wing should defend the government because we're having a very conservative way, and so it's either with the government or the right wing. You cannot have a left wing critic towards the moment.
Il y a sur cette crise deux narratives qui occupent l'espace politique. Une, c'est celle de médias qui affirme que le seul problème du Brésil, c'est la corruption, on ne parle que de ça. Et ensemble avec les médias, la campagne de la droite qui identifie la corruption uniquement avec le PT. Bon, et la deuxième narrative est celle du gouvernement qui dit, mais vous voyez, la droite veut renverser le gouvernement légal, le gouvernement de gauche, la gauche doit défendre ce gouvernement. Il n'y a pas lieu d'une critique de gauche de ce gouvernement, il faut le défendre contre la droite.
And the discussion we have been doing is exactly that we should have a more complex approach towards the situation, and that to explain what is happening, why we have this political crisis in Brazil, that's not possible to be explained within only the field of politics. It has to be also extended towards the space of social movements. What was the history of the PT government? What was the economic crisis and so on. So we think that mainly to explain it, we would have to link it with the like the end of the model of development of PT in Brazil on one side, and on the other side to sort of coming to an end also to the traditional way of making politics in Brazil ever since we've had the republic after the dictatorship. So it would be like balancing on these both sides.
Bien. Alors nous, on propose une approche plus complexe. Nous pensons que cette crise n'est pas uniquement politique institutionnelle, elle est plus profonde. Et au fond, c'est une crise qui semble montrer, indique la fin du modèle de développement proposé par le PT au gouvernement depuis des années, et aussi la fin de la façon traditionnelle de faire la politique au Brésil depuis la fin de la dictature dans les années 80.
So to really like talk about it, it's like impossible not to talk a little bit about what the government of PT was, although I think most of you are familiar with it, and so I won't like go too much on it, but like some basic characteristics I think would be good to like put them back. So we're talking about a government that was brought, like a party that was built up on very important social struggles, like an historical bloc, you could say. Very important, constructed in Brazil during the 70s and the 80s, that involved especially unions and social movements struggling for land, and that evolved basing its strategies both on the parliament on one side and social movements on the other. And during its evolvement, we saw that the arm on the parliament side grew bigger than the one on the movement side, making that the arm, this metaphor is strange, but the arm on the movement side would start to exist to make the arm on the parliament successful. So would have like change its program sometimes in order to maintain a strategy throughout parliament.
Alors, il faudrait donc commencer par un bilan rapide de qu'est-ce qu'était l'expérience du PT au gouvernement. Bon, je suppose que vous connaissez un peu cette histoire, mais je rappelle que le PT était un parti fondé sur les mouvements sociaux, sur les grandes luttes sociales des années 70 et 80, lutte syndicale, lutte paysanne, etc. Et que le PT se voulait un parti qui combine le Parlement, les élections, les institutions et les mouvements sociaux. Sauf que le côté parlementaire et institutionnel est devenu de plus en plus important et celui des mouvements sociaux de moins en moins. Et pour le PT, devait se subordonner aux besoins de l'activité parlementaire et institutionnelle.
So when we get finally, I think this process culminates on the winning of the national elections in 2002. And when we get there, we're looking at a government that can hardly be recognizable as a workers' government. It starts like not having any pretension of doing any kind of structural reforms of any kind, having a clear alliance with the bourgeoisie, Brazilian bourgeoisie, especially the finance and agricultural and from civil construction sectors. And at the same time as it has a path towards economy on, I don't know if this is a word, but reprimarization, like reprimarization of the economy, like coming back to only selling commodities and really coming back to the basis of the economy, and having a sort of more enclosed process of privatization, which weren't so clear as the government before it. At the same time, it would have some very popular policies in terms of assistentialist programs, not structural ones, and in that way it managed to maintain a certain consensus in society, managing to give the bourgeoisie what it wanted, at the same time managing to calm down the social movements linked to it, and get a parcel of the population out of miserable conditions of life. And that was sort of also the way it managed to survive the crisis after 2008. I think with both the link towards China, and inside, what do you say? Incentivate the internal market throughout these assistentialist programs and credit, basically. So during the first 12 years of the government, we weren't impacted so much by the crisis because of this way of developing capitalism, which was successful in a way in Brazil, successful in capitalist sort of way, see, but successful in a way in Brazil during that time.
Ok, alors, cette tendance institutionnalisation du parti, du PT, a culminé avec la victoire électorale de 2002 et avec la formation du gouvernement du PT, qui n'était pas du tout un gouvernement ouvrier, mais un gouvernement de alliance avec la bourgeoisie financière, la bourgeoisie le secteur de la construction, le propriétaire foncier, etc. Et bon, pendant toutes ces années, on voit un processus de, comment dire, je ne sais pas les termes en économie, mais les Brésiliens disent réprimatisation de l'économie. Ça redevient une économie primaire de produits, de matières premières, de commodities, comme on dit, bon, produits agricoles, etc., de matières premières. Bon. mines. Bon. En même temps, il faut dire que ce gouvernement avait deux politiques s'adressant aux pauvres, des politiques d'assistance, qui ont aidé effectivement une partie du secteur le plus pauvre, appauvri, de sortir de la misère. Et ça a permis d'assurer au gouvernement une certaine popularité, et ça a permis de mener donc une politique de conciliation des classes en calmant, disons, les souffrances des pauvres d'un côté, sans toucher aux privilèges des riches de l'autre. Et ça a permis, avec le crédit de l'État, une politique de développement du capitalisme pendant ces 12 années.
And what we are looking at now is that it's sort of reached the limit of this sort of development. So both in economical and political ways, PT has sort of reached the limit of doing this kind of politics. And what we think is a moment that is very important, like marking that, was June in 2013. So 2 years ago, we had a series of very big demonstrations in Brazil. They started off because people were struggling for the reduction of the price of public transport, but after they grew into very big demonstrations that had, what they had in common was that people were not satisfied about what they saw, but they were very diffuse, very fragmented in their demands. They were progressive in the way that most people were demanding social rights, but at the same time they weren't really like definite on what they were demanding, how they were going to do it. They didn't have collective references or anything like that. So although after the big series of manifestations, like they stopped, we don't have 1 million people on the streets anymore, but they stopped. But we consider that this was sort of a cut in juncture, especially concerning first like a representation of the crisis of representation, like really like showing that there is a crisis of representation because all those people on the street really couldn't see themselves in politics. They were saying no to politics as a whole, like saying parties don't represent me because politics is this. So this is one thing that became clear after 2013. And the second thing is that the struggling on the streets, demonstrating, is again a legitimate tool in Brazil. It's seen as such by most of the population. Before 2013, if you went out demonstrating, you would probably be seen as a crazy person or someone who was just like didn't want to work or for some reason. And after 2013, it's seen as something legitimate for you to do.
Donc ce qu'on voit actuellement, c'est les limites, le PT a atteint les limites de ces modèles, aussi bien en termes économiques et politiques. Un tournant a eu lieu vers juin 2013. Comme vous vous rappelez peut-être, il y a eu de très grandes démonstrations, de très grandes manifestations au Brésil, qui ont commencé avec l'affaire du prix de transport public qui avait été augmenté par les différents gouvernements locaux, mais qui est devenu par la suite un mouvement beaucoup plus large avec des revendications diverses, sociales généralement, pas conservatrices, mais pas non plus avec un agenda politique très clair. Ce qu'on voyait, c'est que la plupart des gens ne se sentaient plus représentés par les partis et les institutions politiques existantes, d'une part, et d'autre part que la lutte, les mobilisations dans la rue sont devenues légitimes à un degré sans précédent au Brésil.
So that influences everything that's happened since. For example, the elections we had in 2014, in which Dilma was re-elected. Although she was re-elected, it was not an easy election. It was very tight on the second round, and symbolically, during the election was so tight that symbolically PT had to come a little to the left during the elections. the content of their program was not left at all. They wouldn't even talk about, for example, agrarian reform. That wasn't the word. They were just using more red and eventually saying that she had been a militant against the dictatorship, like using references rather than really like the content of politics. But still, it was a big polarization in Brazil during the elections. During that time, it was an important polarization, and I think it has to do also with the fact that people were positioning themselves as more politically after 2013.
Ok. Alors, cette mobilisation de 2013 a eu une influence sur les élections de 2014, élections qui ont vu Dilma être réélue. Une victoire difficile, hein, la différence était petite. Mais bon, c'était une polarisation gauche-droite et le PT a été obligé à avoir un discours un peu plus à gauche, pas substantiellement, sans mentionner des choses importantes comme la réforme agraire, etc. Mais enfin, bon, par exemple, rappelant que Dilma avait été dans sa jeunesse une combattante de gauche contre la dictature militaire, etc.
And the thing is that after they won, it was like really completely the inverse of anything they might have said that was more left-wing during the campaign. So just like by forming the government, all the ministers were completely right-winged. The biggest representative of the agrarian bourgeoisie is like the Ministerial of Agrarian, I don't know how to say it, but like agriculture minister. So it is like a really right-winged ministry that she formed, like really showing that to make politics in Brazil, you have to be like selling vacancies inside the state in order to make alliances with other parties of the order, parties of the bourgeoisie, and that PT was into that completely. So she was like saying, hello people, I'm here to do your game, so be my guest. Come in.
Mais tout de suite après la victoire, dès que Dilma a formé son nouveau gouvernement, c'était clair que ce n'était pas un tournant à gauche, mais c'était un tournant à droite, qui s'est manifesté dans la composition du ministère, et notamment dans un symbole fort. Le ministère de l'Agriculture a été donné à une femme qui était une des porte-parole du mouvement des grands propriétaires fonciers, des latifondistes. Donc elle était là pour dire aux latifondistes, vous pouvez compter sur ce gouvernement, il est le vôtre, il est à vos ordres.
And that is also true on the parliament, because the parliament that was elected this year, the year before. Anyway, the parliament was the most conservative ever in Brazil. And that is not a matter of, that didn't happen out of the blue. It's a process, because during all these years, PT has done nothing to discuss the conservative issue. So it's been growing the space for this kind of ideology to take place. And at the same time, it has broadened its alliances to such a level that will include the most conservative, religious, related to the agribusiness, and even militias and other stuff into their bases. And this has made that the government is even more pressured to the right wing, because the parliament is so right wing. And so they have been elaborating a lot of attacks in terms of conservative attacks towards the oppressed sectors, so like minorities. So I can give like a few examples, like the reduction of the penal majority. I don't know if that's how you say it, of the age, like the age you have to go to jail. So in Brazil nowadays it's 18, so they wanted to reduce it to 16, and this is actually been approved in a number of stages already. And in reality, it means that it will legalizing the killing of our poor youth, black youth in the peripheries of Brazil. Another example is a law project that criminalizes abortion even more than it already is in Brazil, because it is a crime already. So there's a law project that will make it even worse and more difficult, even if you're raped or if you're just getting a day after pill or something like that. All of that would be illegal and get you to jail. There are law projects that will stop Indians' territories being demarked and make it even easier for the agribusiness to kill Indians, as they already do on a Genocide Act. And also there's the family statute, which is a form of saying that the family in Brazil is only constituted by men, women and children. So excluding completely any people who are not inside that from any public policy, which is like medieval, but okay. And so we have this on one side, but I'll stop here because I said too much.
Are projects or laws already approved or what?
Well, all of them are in some stage of being approved. They're not completely approved yet.
Okay. Alors, d'autre part, la situation est aussi grave parce que le Parlement qui a été élu à ce moment-là est le plus conservateur, le plus réactionnaire dans l'histoire récente du Brésil. Et bon, le PT a une lourde responsabilité dans cette vague conservatrice parce qu'il n'a jamais mené la bataille contre les idées conservatrices, les idées réactionnaires. Et au contraire, il a souvent fait des alliances sans principe avec des secteurs très rétrogrades, des religieux ultra-conservateurs, etc. Bon. Alors, ce qu'on assiste maintenant dans le Parlement, c'est une offensive de cette droite dure, conservatrice, réactionnaire, contre toute une série de secteurs de la population. Par exemple, il y a une pression pour faire baisser l'âge légal pour le mineur, disons, qui aujourd'hui est de 18 ans. Donc, cette droite parlementaire veut faire baisser l'âge pénal, disons, à 16 ans. C'est aussi une façon de légaliser la politique, les pratiques de la police, de massacrer le jeune noir dans le bidonville, dans les falaises. Bon. Autre exemple, c'est faire passer une loi qui aggrave la criminalisation de l'avortement. L'avortement est illégal au Brésil, mais ce projet de loi veut le rendre encore plus criminel, y compris dans les cas, en cas de viol. Et d'autres exemples, c'est le projet de loi qui réduit les droits des populations indigènes de l'Amazonie à leurs terres et qui donc favorise l'expansion de l'agronégoce au détriment des Indiens. Et aussi le projet de loi d'une nouvelle loi de la famille plus conservatrice, etc. Bon, tout ça, c'est des choses qui sont en cours au Parlement, qui ont déjà été approuvées en première lecture, etc.
And along with that, we've got the crisis, which is finally hitting Brazil now. So since last year, we can say that economically, Brazil has been more affected by the crisis, since it was more linked with China, and the rate of growth in China has been reduced in the past years, so our economy ain't growing as much, and we cannot sustain on credit anymore. So the taxes of juros, how do you say juros?
Les intérêts.
Interest, the taxes of interest are going up again, so it's difficult for people to get credit and they can't consume anymore, and that is bad both for the market in some way and another way for the people who had the right to consume in some way. Now they don't anymore, so they're not very happy about that. And what is the answer of government towards the crisis? Adjustment. They will apply austerity. They will make a lot of cuts on education, so we've had several cuts on education and health, mainly, and a lot of attacks concerning labor rights, the basic legislation we've got on labor, which dates like from the 30s, is being attacked on a law project of which will make outsourcing legal in almost every instance. So all these, and we've got like increase on the number of unemployment and so on. So this is all making it even more complicated for the reality in Brazil.
Bien. Alors, la crise économique internationale a finalement atteint le Brésil l'année dernière, entre autres parce que la Chine a réduit ses importations. Et donc, bon, les taux d'intérêt de banque ont augmenté, ce qui a réduit aussi l'activité économique, augmenté le chômage, etc. Et la réponse du gouvernement à tout cela, c'est classique, réponse comme en Europe, ça c'est moi qui ajoute, austérité, hein, c'est-à-dire des coupes dans l'éducation, dans la santé, et de nouvelles lois sur le droit du travail en réduisant les droits du travail, etc.
And on top of that, we've got the corruption scandal, which is very big. It exploded in 2014, but it is very big. It involves the biggest the biggest enterprise in Latin America, but like the biggest state enterprise, which involves every time there's a new denouncing about it, more and more politicians are involved, and it's a lot of politicians from PT, but also from every party, like all the parties that had deputies elected in 2014 were involved in this corruption scandal, but PSOL, of course. But so all of them were involved in one or the other way, and very big names are being mentioned. For example, Aécio, who was the opposition of Dilma during the election, he was the other one on the second round of the election. He has been mentioned, and Eduardo Cunha, who is the leader of the parliament, he has been mentioned. And after that, since he is like the one who has been putting all these policies, he's like the head of these policies, very conservative and right-wing policies. After he's been mentioned, he has been trying to like blackmail the government in a way, just so that the investigations wouldn't go on after him. And so he has been like negotiating, like I will do or not start the impeachment process according to what you do towards me. So that we've had a lot of time in which there was this kind of negotiation.
Bien. Alors, outre la crise économique, il y a eu les scandales de la corruption, qui est en rapport avec l'entreprise de pétrole, Petrobras, qui est la plus grande entreprise d'État d'Amérique latine. Alors, on a trouvé que dans ces scandales étaient, impliqués beaucoup de politiciens du PT, mais pas seulement du PT, aussi des autres partis, de la droite, etc. Par exemple, Aécio, qui était le candidat de la droite contre Dilma à la présidence, qui a presque gagné, est aussi impliqué dans le scandale. Et surtout, Eduardo Cunha, le président du Parlement, qui est à la tête de cette offensive réactionnaire, est lui aussi impliqué. Et ce qu'il essaie de faire, Cunha, c'est jouer au chantage avec le gouvernement, avec Dilma, en disant: si vous abandonnez les poursuites contre moi, j'abandonne l'impeachment contre Dilma, ou au contraire, si vous continuez à mener le procès contre moi, je vais mener l'impeachment contre Dilma.
And then in the end, as the scandals around Cunha were very, like, there was no way of really denying it. So after that, he started the impeachment process, and that's when it started, like a few weeks, 2 months ago, let's say. What we really like see as a consequence of this all, I think, would be that we've got a major crisis of representation and a crisis of the political system in Brazil. PT is the one who's suffering more with that because they're the government, so they're like getting a lot of what is this indignation with this. But at the same time, since I've been talking about government and so on, there's resistance to that. So it's important to talk about that too. So I'll start on to the resistance. I don't know if you want. I'll go on to the resistance.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Non, je vais juste terminer, c'était bien dit. Bon, le chantage n'a pas marché, donc Cogna, le président du Parlement, a été mis en examen par le procureur et il a initié le processus d'impeachment contre lui. On va voir qu'est-ce que ça va donner. Maintenant, elle va parler un peu de la résistance populaire.
Ever since 2012, so 1 year before the big demonstrations we had in 2013, we were already seeing a growth in the number of demonstrations in Brazil, especially regarding strikes. So we hadn't had so many strikes since the 90s, so like the end of the 90s. So it was really like significant that the number of strikes had risen so much in 2012. Then after 2013, as I said, was a break. So we really have been having so many demonstrations all the time. People are in some way, although it's not general, they're not articulated, it's not a movement within a strategy, but people on the street, if they have a problem, they will demonstrate. So there's demonstrations everywhere all the time, especially in big cities. If you're like in São Paulo, for example, there will be a demonstration somewhere. Like if you take a cab, the taxi driver will like, oh no, I'm going this way because there's a demonstration there and there, and so on. People know, and there will be some like every day for some reason. I think concerning the resistance, we can talk about resistance. Like we can talk about some very important strikes we've had. One was a few were with the teachers, so we've had some very important strikes concerning teachers in Brazil that were very badly repressed by the state. So one, for example, was in our state, which is Paraná, and there was like a huge movement, and it was there was a massacre from the state in the beginning of last year. Which was really like violent and had it's completely unjustifiable. Another example is the strikes we had last year also on the cleaning agents in Rio, which was very important because it's a very precarious job. So it's very difficult to organize in a union because they're really like don't stay in the job for so long. It's very flexible, and they made a very important strike, a very important movement against the bureaucracy of the union. So that's really an important sign when we're talking about all the union movement in Brazil is really completely bureaucratic and linked to Taine in some way or to other even more right-wing centrals. So these are sort of lights of hope for us that come out.
Bien. Alors, dès 2012, on voyait déjà une vague de grèves sans précédent depuis les années 90 au Brésil. Et après les grandes manifestations de 2013, la parole s'est libérée, disons, et on assiste à des manifestations tout le temps, presque tous les jours dans les grandes villes, il y a des manifestations de tel groupe, tel autre, plus grandes, plus petites. Et aussi, on a assisté les dernières années à des grèves très importantes. Par exemple, la grève des enseignants, qui, dans certaines régions, comme le Paraná, l'État du Paraná, a été victime d'une brutale répression de la police locale, avec des blessés, des morts, etc. Une autre grève importante était celle du personnel de nettoyage de la ville de Rio, personnel précaire, travaillant dans des conditions très difficiles, difficultés à se syndicaliser, etc. C'était aussi une grève contre la bureaucratie syndicale, parce que la plupart des syndicats sont dirigés par des bureaucrates, soit liés au PT, soit liés encore à des courants encore plus à droite que le PT.
And this year we've had some other manifestations that are important too. We've had a series of feminist manifestations the second semester. They were very important. During my whole period of I haven't been a militant for that long, but I don't know, for like 10 years, I have never been in a big feminist manifestation in Brazil, which is also part of the fact that all the feminist movement was linked to PT in some way, and they were the government, so they wouldn't really demonstrate. So this year it was the first time I and all of us actually have ever been to a big demonstration that was demanding something towards abortion, for example, which is in a very conservative country. It's something that is very important, and it happened, very big demonstrations in many cities in Brazil, so I think that is very important, very relevant. Also, we've had, in the end of the year, a lot of occupations in schools in the state of São Paulo. These occupations were happening in schools, like high schools, and this is also important because it's sort of a new generation of people who are becoming politically active. And this was like, they were really radicals, and they were using a lot of democratic means of organizing the movement. So it is also something that is linked to this evaluation we made in 2013, the fact that the youth was unhappy about politics, but they were willing to do something that is also politics, but they weren't really calling it that.
Occupation of schools by teachers, students?
Students.
Like there were teachers that were supporting them, but it was mainly by the students, the youth. And since they were public schools, there was a lot of peripheric black people involved who historically are not the vanguard of the struggle in Brazil, because it's a very racist country and conservative. So this is very important when we're looking about like how to organize people.
They are very young, like 13, 14 years. Very, very young.
High school, yeah.
Yeah, and they were like going against the closure of schools.
Bon, il y a d'autres secteurs qui se mobilisent aussi. Par exemple, les féministes. Il y a eu une très grande manifestation féministe en 2015, sans précédent depuis beaucoup d'années, pour le droit à l'avortement, ce qui est assez courageux au Brésil. Et il y a aussi eu beaucoup de protestations des étudiants des écoles secondaires qui ont occupé leurs écoles, qui étaient menacées de fermeture, etc. Et il est intéressant de noter que, comme beaucoup de ces écoles publiques sont dans la périphérie pauvre des grandes villes, il y a pas mal d'étudiants noirs, de jeunes adolescents noirs qui ont participé à ces occupations.
And well, so in this context we have grown since the previous time, because it was very difficult to be an opposition of the PT government for most of the time, because it was a very popular government, and any opposition would be would have a stigma of being right-wing. Oh, are you against people getting out of poverty? No, we're not against that. We're against the fact that this won't continue in a bit, because the crisis will come and it's inevitable. You either do something structural or you don't do anything at all. So it was difficult being an opposition for a long time, and it is still not easy, but we're growing, which is, I think, something important. Like the deputies we have in parliament, they're good references. Nationally speaking, they've been doing very important struggles, although PSOL has a lot of problems, and we could talk a lot about them, but that's not the point. And I think that what we have as a policy towards what is happening now is, first, we're against, PSOL is against the impeachment, where we do not support the try that the right wing is trying to overtake the government. We do not support any opposition of the government that is right wing. This is the first one. So we're against the right wing. At the same time, we're against the government and all its austerity policies. So this is the second one. And what we've been discussing inside Insurgencia, we would have to have, even though we're very small and we don't have a lot of influence, we would have to have some sort of political way out. What do we offer people? What should happen politically speaking? So internally we started discussing, for example, a constitutional assembly, I don't know if you call it that, but it is very, very difficult, because at the same time, if you open a process as such, something even worse than our legislation could come, since we've got so many conservative ideas going on. So it is very difficult, and we yet haven't started propaganda public. We're just still discussing internally what kind of political way out we could propose.
Bien. Alors, pendant ces années-là, il n'était pas facile d'être en opposition de gauche au gouvernement du PT. Les gens disaient, mais vous êtes contre le fait que le gouvernement a sorti tellement de gens de la misère, etc. Bon, maintenant, avec la nouvelle conjoncture, c'est devenu plus facile, pas très facile, mais plus facile de légitimer une critique de gauche du gouvernement. Et donc le PSOL commence à occuper cet espace à gauche du PT, il commence à croître. Ces députés sont des personnalités politiques connues, respectées. Bon, donc la pignon sur rue. Maintenant, la position du PSOL face à la crise actuelle, c'est de s'opposer à l'impeachment de Dilma et s'opposer à toutes les campagnes de la droite contre le gouvernement, c'est-à-dire, mais en même temps, on s'oppose aux politiques d'austérité, aux politiques néolibérales du gouvernement. Maintenant, le problème, c'est quelle alternative on propose. Et là, on n'est pas très avancé, on discute différentes propositions. Une qu'on a commencé à discuter, c'était est-ce qu'il faut proposer une assemblée constituante. Et on s'est dit, dans le rapport de force actuel, elle risque d'être encore plus réactionnaire que le Parlement actuel.
And to finish, what we've been really doing is try to bring all the people who are struggling against these policies together into a unitary tool that will go against that. That is not very easy, because after all the problem we've had with PT, the left has been completely fragmented into a lot of organizations, and the fact that we even have PSOL is like a miracle in the world, because it's really difficult to keep people together. So in the movement, although there are a lot of organizations who are struggling against these measures in those various ways, it is difficult to get like, let's have one front together, all of us. It's difficult to have that, because some of them are more too much to the left and won't even talk to the ones that have any who are in the movement but who negotiate with the government in some way, but are possibly could be disputed on a more left-wing side. So it's difficult, and we as Insurgia and as PSOL, we have been discussing on participating on every space that has been building up the struggle against austerity, and trying to bring together a new kind of tool that will bring the debate on the political terms, as well as not only the economics but also on the political terms. So I think that's sort of it. I hope I could contribute in some way to the discussion.
Bien. Alors, notre stratégie dans la situation actuelle du PSOL, c'est d'essayer d'unifier tous ceux qui sont en lutte contre les politiques d'austérité, les politiques néolibérales, les politiques conservatrices, des mouvements sociaux, des partis politiques, des organisations, etc. Ce qui n'est pas facile, parce que la gauche au Brésil est très fragmentée. La tendance à la fragmentation est tellement forte que c'est un miracle que le PSOL ne s'est pas encore cassé en mille morceaux. Bon, il y a beaucoup d'organisations et de mouvements qui sont en lutte, mais avec des conceptions très différentes. Il y a ceux qui sont très radicaux mais qui refusent toute forme d'unité, avec d'autres, plus modérés. Il y a ceux qui veulent fondamentalement négocier avec le gouvernement, avec un meilleur rapport de force. Bon, donc c'est pas facile d'unifier tous ces gens-là dans un front commun. Voilà, c'est un peu ça le défi pour nous, c'est ça que le PSOL, en tout cas, participe à toute initiative qui a un caractère unitaire et qui s'oppose aux politiques néolibérales ou conservatrices.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. So, Daniel, do you want to add something?
We just would like to mention a sad news we received yesterday. Accompanied Carlinhos Campos. That yesterday he was founded of DS and PT and PSOL and insurgents in Brazil. A very important companion, and we are very sad about this, and we have to mention this sad news because it was a very important, and our organization is in loot in this moment, and we are here and sad about this.
Which region he was?
Minas Gerais, who was the president of the PSOL in the state in the last.
And it was as a fourth international.
Yes.
And it was a very sudden
Death.
death. Nobody expected it.
Alors Daniel apporte une nouvelle triste. Un camarade, un des dirigeants de notre courant au Brésil, Carlinhos Campos de Minas Gerais, vient de décéder de façon soudaine. Il était un des fondateurs de DS, Démocratie Socialiste, qui était notre courant depuis les années 80 au Brésil, un des fondateurs du PT, un des fondateurs du PSOL, un des fondateurs d'Insurgia, notre courant actuel, un militant de la 4e internationale. Nous sommes en deuil avec son départ. Excusez-moi, un instant.
Okay, so our condolences to the comrades.
Qui prévu?
Moi, je peux aider aussi s'il faut. Okay, so questions, first of all, to the camarades. Excuse-moi, non, à vous, je parle en français.
Oui.
Alors, les questions aux camarades brésiliens. Gérard.
You yourself said at the end that there was a lot of fragmentation inside the Brazilian left, and you propose, of course, to unite that. And so, do you think that accentuation of the recession, which is at present going on, will lead to a stop of that fragmentation? And do you have immediate measures in your program that you tend to propose in order to unify the contestation movement?
Alors, faut-il traduire la question en français?
Alors, je traduis ce que j'ai dit.
Oui,
Traduis
donc
ce que j'ai demandé. Vous avez dit vous-même que la gauche brésilienne radicale est très fragmentée. Bon, quels sont les... Est-ce que vous pensez d'abord que l'accentuation de la récession va porter un coup à cette fragmentation? Et est-ce que vous avez des mesures immédiates qui vont, en quelque sorte, permettre d'unifier le mouvement sur des thèmes précis? Votre programme. Voilà, c'est bien ça que j'ai demandé, je suppose.
Eu gostaria que contara un poco a trajetória de onde viene Insurgência, porque faz só 2 anos, anteriormente, como foi o processo. Primeiro. Segundo, faut pas que je traduise.
On comprend, mais il fallira pas.
Ou alors en français.
Non, il peut dire lui-même. Alors, tu poses ta question.
Je demande un peu d'où vient Insurgência, dans l'histoire de la section de la 4, comment ça s'est formé, à travers quel processus. Et João Machado, onde fica?
São Paulo.
São Paulo. Ok, eu amigo. Alors, la deuxième chose, c'est que unifier contre les politiques d'austérité, muy bien, muito bem, mas onde fica a luta contra a corrupção? J'ai discuté il y a 10 jours, avec des camarades de Rio du PT, face au problème, la corruption existe ou ça n'existe pas? La corruption elle est générale. Pourquoi attaquer le PT? Pourquoi attaquer solo le PT? Pero tem que parar com a corrupção do PT ou não? Não é um problema. Militantes de 25 anos, fundadores do PT, o grado de desmoralização da militância é uma coisa, uma podredumbre. Isto está podrendo. E se a esquerda não leva uma política de vanguarda para que estejam condenados todos, que esteja centrado, não desligado da luta contra a austeridade, não pode conseguir a tarefa de purificação que necessita a esquerda no Brasil. Não tem fundamento de reconstrução se não se vai no fundo do que foi a corrupção, porque a corrupção se acostumado, os militantes se acostumbraram da corrupção. É normal, é brasileiro, somos brasileiros, o sistema é assim.
Ok, tu peux résumer ta question en français?
Oui, il ne faudrait pas qu'il y ait une absence de l'unification pour l'austérité, ok, mais il ne faudrait pas qu'il soit absent la lutte contre la corruption, parce qu'il y a une démoralisation de tout ce qui est gauche, des militants de gauche sur ce terrain, et une acceptation finalement de l'ensemble du système à travers ce billet. Alors, je termine. Eu lembro que a campanha da Heloísa foi criticada porque ela era a que ia a fazer a luta contra a corrupção, esquecendo a luta contra o sistema capitalista, contra um programa de defesa, de transição, etc. Mas tem que ter as duas coisas, me parece que tem as duas coisas. Voilà.
Parce qu'il n'y a pas tout le monde.
Il y a un fatalisme.
Retraduit.
Oui,
Hein
donc il faut que
un
tu...
fatalisme de la corruption qui a cette évolution.
Traduit un peu en français. Hein.
Oui, d'accord. Je me souviens de la campagne d'Héloïse Hélène. On avait elle était la championne dans la lutte contre la corruption. On avait un peu critiqué qu'elle s'était détachée d'un programme, disons, de type de mesures anticapitalistes à prendre. Mais si on oublie les deux et on n'accompagne pas les deux, l'action est bancale.
D'accord. Donc, Daniela veut poser une question aussi. Donc,
Eu vou perguntar em português e depois eu traduzo, porque eu sou brasileira. Eu moro aqui faz quase 10 anos, mas eu sou brasileira. Duas perguntas, na verdade. A primeira é que eu tenho a impressão, assim, de longe, às vezes o fato de estar longe dá um certo recuo, que tem um certo fenômeno se desenvolvendo no Brasil atualmente que tem muito a ver com a dinâmica da luta de classes em outros países emergentes, entre aspas. Eu penso muito, por exemplo, na comparação com a África do Sul. Quer dizer, países que durante todo o último período se prometeu um grande crescimento econômico, melhoras nas condições de vida da população, se criaram aspirações sociais e de repente a crise vem bruscamente e se choca, tem um choque entre as aspirações que se criaram no período precedente e digamos, a realidade nua e crua da crise capitalista mundial. E tanto na África do Sul como no Brasil tem fenômenos muito interessantes, tanto no movimento operário, né, de greves, vocês citaram toda uma série de greves, mas esse ano ainda teve a greve da Petrobras, etc. Na África do Sul tem o fenômeno dos mineiros e o fenômeno nas empresas de automóvel, na indústria automotiva, e agora também com um forte movimento estudantil na África do Sul e no Brasil também fenômeno mais na juventude. Então, se vocês veem uma comparação, se isso do Brasil é uma coisa que é visível, que de alguma forma, inclusive, se acompanha um pouco. Eu lembro que, numa certa época, os brasileiros olhavam muito para o que acontecia na Turquia, né, e viam uma relação entre a mobilização dos turcos e o que estava acontecendo no Brasil em 2013. Je pose la question en fait sur le rapport en fait entre la dynamique de la lutte de classe au Brésil et dans d'autres pays émergents, c'est-à-dire où il y a une dynamique en fait où les aspirations qui ont été créées par une période où la situation économique était encore plus favorable, elles sortent en fait à la réalité dure de la crise en fait où la situation économique s'inverse très très vite, et c'est ça en fait qui crée des phénomènes nouveaux dans la lutte de classe, avec y compris un certain nombre de points de ressemblance. En fait, si on regarde par exemple l'Afrique du Sud, il y a à la fois un processus de lutte dans le mouvement ouvrier où on peut penser en fait aux luttes dans l'industrie automobile ou chez les mineurs, et en même temps aussi un renouveau de lutte dans la jeunesse, à l'université. Et au Brésil on voit une sorte en fait de phénomène du même type. E só para completar, o outro elemento é o questionamento do racismo, né, da questão negra, que no Brasil eu tenho a impressão, inclusive eu fui agora no último período para o Brasil, e o movimento negro emergiu de uma forma enorme. Todas as questões democráticas ficou um discurso muito mais radical que o que eu conhecia na época em que eu estava no Brasil, que era super reformista o movimento negro. Et la question noire aussi, en fait, de l'apartheid social qui existe au Brésil, qui gagne beaucoup de poids, avec une radicalisation, y compris du mouvement noir au Brésil. Essa é a primeira pergunta. E a segunda, eu cheguei atrasada porque eu estava em outra reunião, eu não sei se vocês comentaram os acontecimentos dos últimos dias, assim, né? A volta das mobilizações com a questão do preço da tarifa dos transportes, né? Porque começaram a ter de novo mobilizações relativamente importantes, pelo menos em São Paulo, no Rio, em Belo Horizonte, eu vi no meio das férias. Quer dizer que pode ser que de alguma forma seja, enfim, quando as férias comecem a chegar mais ao fim, role um processo mais de massificação. Inclusive ontem, com uma repressão brutal em São Paulo, com muitos feridos, se nota que o governo está preocupado com a possibilidade, digamos, no marco da crise política terrível que tem, de que nessa brecha de alguma forma surja de novo a juventude, que a gente tem um novo junho, num certo sentido, no Brasil. Como vocês veem mais as perspectivas? Vocês acham que tem possibilidade de massificar o movimento e de alguma forma surgir nesse panorama super polarizado no Brasil entre a direita e o PT, um terceiro ator mais forte que seja o movimento da juventude, que seja o movimento social, com o peso que ele pôde de alguma forma ter em 2013 no Brasil? Conversando com alguns, conversando com alguns camaradas, o que eles diziam em São Paulo, pelo menos, é que tinha uma contradição, que é que a gente acabou de sair de uma mobilização histórica da molecada do movimento secundarista, mas que a molecada do movimento secundarista não é a geração de junho de 2013, já é outra geração. A molecada que está se mobilizando agora, que tem 13 anos agora, tinha 10 na época de junho, né? E que de alguma forma o governo tentava principalmente dividir isso, quer dizer, falar, esse pessoal que está se mobilizando, a geração de junho, são vândalos. Então os caras colocavam toda a coisa, né, do Black Bloc, etc. E a molecadinha não, o movimento dos secundaristas é um movimento democrático, etc. E a questão, enfim, da junção de se pode de alguma forma surgir uma unificação entre a geração que viveu 2013 e essa nova geração militante mais nova ainda que surgiu através das lutas secundaristas recentes. Et de façon très résumée en français, je disais en fait que là, ces derniers jours, en fait, il y a un ressurgissement des mobilisations autour de la question des tarifs de transport au Brésil. Donc il y a eu quelques manifestations qui ne sont pas énormes pour l'instant, mais il faut savoir qu'on est en plein milieu des vacances d'été au Brésil. C'est comme si on était en fait le 30 juillet pour le Brésil. Donc en fait il y a une possibilité que cela prenne de l'ampleur. Comment eux ils voient cette possibilité-là dans un contexte où on voit bien en fait qu'il y a une crise politique énorme et que le gouvernement tape très très dur. Hier il y a eu une répression énorme en fait à la manifestation à São Paulo, parce que le gouvernement essaie de tuer dans l'œuf une mobilisation qui pourrait faire émerger un troisième acteur entre guillemets face à la polarisation qui existe entre le PT et la droite, et où en même temps en fait on voit un renouvellement générationnel qui est très rapide. En discutant avec des camarades sur place, ils disaient que les jeunes qui se sont mobilisés sur la question des fermetures des écoles, ils sont déjà plus la génération juin 2013. C'est-à-dire en fait les jeunes qui ont 13-14 ans aujourd'hui, ils avaient 10-11 en 2013. Et donc en même temps en fait avec le gouvernement essaie de jouer là-dessus en fait, de diviser entre les casseurs des mobilisations contre les tarifs de transport et les étudiants gentils, en fait les lycéens et les collégiens gentils. Donc il y a une possibilité en fait qu'il y ait une jonction et qu'il y ait en fait un véritable mouvement qui change un peu l'ensemble du panorama politique. Comment ils voient ces perspectives-là.
Okay, I think that's lots